Good afternoon, everybody, from sunny and warm
Budapest.
I don't know where we are. This is what it's like, isn't it?
Sofia. It is Sofia. Budapest, where did that come from?
Let me rephrase.
Somewhere in Europe.
Somewhere in Central to Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
We can't let this man's location be identified. But a good afternoon from Sofia, Bulgaria, where it is a beautiful, warm, sunny afternoon, mid-autumn's day. And I am really delighted that we're having this man back on the show. I haven't been able to get him back since 2016. Quick intro. Henry Winter joined The Independent when it launched in 1986. His writing elevating its back pages to the level and influence of the major broadsheets in Britain. He then spent 20 years at the Telegraph before becoming chief football writer at the Times in London. I've watched and listened and learned from you for 2 decades, and I continue now to do so as a journalist, learning even more actually now. Henry is seen and heard often on television and radio as one of the most respected, insightful and compelling voices on football that there is, but it is as a football writer where he's regarded quite simply as one of the finest of all time. For me personally, no one understands more profoundly the history and culture of the England team, nor comes closer to cracking the codes and solving the riddles that seem to confound everyone when it comes to the Three Lions. There's no better illustration than in Henry's book, 50 Years of Hurt, one of the best books about England. At the British Sports Journalism Award, Henry has been awarded Specialist Correspondent of the Year 4 times, and in 2016, Football Writer of the Year. He is also one of the best football tweeters around. There is one annoying thing about you though, Henry, is that you look the same now as you did 20 years ago.
Yeah, a lot of makeup for all those early nights.
I'm really delighted to welcome back to Gadsby's England, the new Gadsby's England network, Henry Winter.
Good, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for being here. First thing to say is we will be honest, we're in the middle of England games. So we're tonight England play Bulgaria, and we were just saying that unless something really dramatic and spectacular happens, this should be a chat on the current state of affairs,
Sure.
Which shouldn't be too
Sure.
irrelevant, right?
Sure.
I mean, do you foresee anything very dramatic happening tonight?
We probably said that before Prague, or wherever we were, and then you look what happened there. England were really poor. The system didn't really work. 4-2-3-1. Look, anything is possible with England, but I think the direction of travel under Southgate has been onwards and upwards. You saw it in the semi-final, the run to the semi-final in Russia. You saw it reaching the semi-final in the Nations League. Look, there's still issues there. Concentrating in defence. Do England have a sort of commanding central midfielder? Can Harry Winks train on? Is Declan Rice still got a lot to learn? I think England are in a good place, but they're certainly not world beaters or European Championship winners yet. Maybe in sort of 2-4 years' time or so they'll mature because it's a very young team. But I think if you look at the quality of France at the moment, you look at the quality of Belgium, you look at the quality of the Dutch, there's some serious opposition, and that's obviously just in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, you've actually kind of answered what I wanted to ask you in the beginning, was that my worry, and I always get very anxious about England, as you know, is that are we looking at a blip, or are we looking at perhaps something worse, a sliding down, that maybe Southgate has become more detached from the progress that we were making? But I mean, I sort of agree with you that I think it would be way too early to say that. But you do think that it's probably a blip, and that the progress can continue?
I think it's a blip, because if you look at the sort of depth of the squad, Southgate's got more options to choose from now. You look at the wide positions. He's obviously got Sterling and probably Jadon Sancho as his starters, although he obviously likes Rashford as well because of his performance in Seville. He's got Callum Hudson-Odoi coming through. So for those 2 positions in the team, assuming he sticks with a 4-3-3, England have got strength and depth. Got Harry Kane up front, Tammy Abraham is doing so well with Chelsea. He's training on. So I think the front 3 positions, England are well served, and I think they're in a better place now than they were going into the World Cup. it's just midfield is a concern. But then you look at the backs. You look at the full-backs that England have got. I mean, how many right-backs have England got at the moment? I mean, again, strength and depth. You look at Trent Alexander-Arnold. You look at Kieran Trippier, who seems to be reborn in Madrid with Atletico. You look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's just gone for 50 million to Manchester United. Okay, he's missed this trip because he's not been well. He's been injured. But again, he's a fantastic player. Possibly less strength in depth on the left. Danny Rose is still sort of churning out half-decent performances at 29, but clearly the future is Ben Chilwell there. Again, the issue is centre-halves. England need John Stones to sort of re-find his mojo and get fit again and start playing regularly for Manchester City, who also need him desperately given their problems at centre-half. Harry Maguire, he's taken a little bit of criticism, particularly after Prague, but I think that there's clearly a very good player there. I'd like to see Joe Gomez and Mings and individuals like that given more of a chance. And so goalkeeper, I mean Pickford's in a good place. I still think England need a couple more goalkeepers just to sort of push him on. Tom Heaton's obviously good, but a younger one to come through. Maybe Dean Henderson, who's been out with the squad. I think he's a superb young goalkeeper. We've seen that with Sheffield United. The fact that Manchester United have given him a new contract, they see him probably as De Gea's long-term replacement. I think he'll come good as well. So I think that he has got options. It's just central midfield and centre half. I think which are fairly important areas.
Slightly,
yeah, it's a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I've had this chat. I mean, I wonder what your opinion is of the fact when there are bad goals conceded, like the first goal was just unwatchable in many ways. Yes, the first people you blame is the defence, but I noticed a lot in both this game against the Czechs and in Kosovo and in other games that the slip-ups come from midfield. Yeah. The defensive work in midfield is putting a lot of pressure on the back four, and I wonder if that is something that is being looked at properly. I mean, I'm sure these are world-class coaches, of course, but do you think we, look to sort of linearly, if you like, at concede a goal, defence is the problem?
Yeah. No, I think Southgate will go through absolutely every detail with it, and he'll re-watch it time and time again just to see what was the source of the mistake, even sort of before that, players out of position, whatever. Southgate and Steve Holland are very conscientious coaches who will go through it, in the meticulous detail, as they should, because they've also got time to do it. The time between international breaks. Southgate's got 20 days just to sort of analyse this, which I'm sure he will. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Declan Rice and Jordan Henderson, pretty conscientious defensive midfielders, certainly in Rice's case. Jordan Henderson's obviously been given the sort of more attacking role for midfield by Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, but still, he works hard. I just think it was a problem with the tactical setup, with Mason Mount sort of playing off Kane effectively as a number 10. There was just too much gap between them and between Mount and Rice and Jordan Henderson. And fair play to the Czechs, they just swarmed into that and pressed the life out of England. So, yeah, I think he'll look at that. I think he made changes during the game. He switched from 4-2-3-1 to 4-3-3 at half-time to sort of try and liberate Mount a bit more, give a bit more protection. So, look, England got a young team. They've got a young manager as well. Maybe he's not that particularly experienced. So, I'm not panicking just yet, but also I'm not booking the open-top bus.
No, it's a good way of putting it. You've seen so many England managers, you've got to know so many.
I'm old.
Yeah, but I've already prefaced that by saying you haven't aged, so I've covered my bases here. So, Bobby Robson would have been the first one probably.
I was more tail end of Graham Taylor, and I really came in properly in terms of doing the job as a correspondent with Terry Venables. So my first trip was quite a nice quiet one to Hong Kong with the dentist chair, and a mad game in China before that.
Oh yes, I started back. So you mentioned Southgate. You've seen all these managers. I mean, what do you see in Southgate that I suppose what I want to ask is that the first England manager in a while, probably in a way since you could argue Venables, who has coped with the tournament pressure. Albeit he didn't have the same expectations as the other England teams, but he did something that none of the recent managers seem to be able to do, which is motivate them properly at a tournament and make them feel they really are a unit. Why is Southgate? The youth obviously has something to do with it, I think, but what have you seen in all those England managers that makes him stand out or is different?
I think that there's so much fear around England, and I think Southgate doesn't feel fear because basically anything that I say about him, if I criticise him as a journalist or the fans have a go at him or their issues with club managers, nothing can compare to just sort of the onslaught he had on him, obviously in a pre-social media age, for missing a penalty for England at Euro 96. So I think he's gone into it and he just said, well, no fear. I think he's also seen, because he's been there, played 50, 60 times for England, he's seen that fear can be an issue. He also saw, when he started out with Terry Venables, he realised that Venables in a way took the fear out from the player because of his good man management. And I think Southgate's gone in with that approach. I think he works best with young players, and he's got them to express themselves. I mean, just little things like organising the sort of the sit-down briefings with all the media before the World Cup. All the players were there in a sort of Super Bowl style setting. Yeah. Whatever they call it, the media day over there, and they all sat there for an hour and they talked, and we sort of rotated around and talked, and it just got them all to express themselves. And that wasn't simply just to sort of build relations with the media, but to build better relations with the supporters, because it was only a year before that the England fans were turning their back on the players at half-time in Malta, which is very rare for the travelling supporters to do that. So I think he's reconnected the national team with the supporters. He's reconnected the national team, I think, with the nation. I think you saw that with the celebrations back home in England when England had that run to the semi-final. And he's reconnected them with us. I think there's a much better mood around them. So the key thing he's done is remove the fear, which is it always inhibited England in the past.
Yeah, and it is quite refreshing to see. I mean, we've just seen a player who probably just retired in the last decade win the World Cup with which is Deschamps, so there is something to be said that it is. I don't know, perhaps the last generation of players are now producing managers. I mean, Lampard and Gerrard seem to be. Yeah,
John Terry will come through.
John Terry,
Joe Cole, Ashley Cole, Sol Campbell's obviously been working. I mean, the real surprise for me is that Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville, who are absolutely brilliant pundits, but I'd love to see them coaching. Yeah. Because I always thought Carragher was going to be more likely to be a manager than Gerrard, because he's just obsessive detail in everything in the game, and he's got that sort of personality. But look how well Gerrard's doing it at Rangers. But I mean, just a point about Deschamps, he's got better players.
Of course he has. But we've had really good players in the past, and I mean Ericsson didn't. I mean, it always is the one that we look
England
back at.
England should have won the Euros in 2004.
Yeah.
Because they weren't any. I mean, Greece won it. Fair play to them. They were well coached, and they played for the show, and they were terrific. Good fullbacks, good centre forward, and all that. But England's squad there, that was the time. Rooney coming through. That was looking back on that. But then Sven played Paul Scholes tucked in on the left, and it was tactically it was a bit amusing.
Something to drive Paul Scholes out of the team, isn't it?
Scholes announced his retirement on the plane coming back.
Yeah, which we completely understand. And that is another thing that I see, correct me if I'm wrong, is the flexibility of Southgate and the inflexibility of somebody like Ericsson. And that I like, because Southgate will just change it, won't he? I mean, it's amazing that he just saw after the World Cup the formation. He was like, nope, out with that one. Yeah. And
well, it's interesting because that's the whole debate at the moment, because he basically went 3-5-2 at the World Cup because he didn't quite trust the defence. And now, of course, this whole debate is England got such problems in defence. Should he then go back to a 3-5-2? My issue with that is that it inhibits the areas where England are strongest, which are the wide players in a 4-3-3. Sterling, he worked so hard in that system, just playing slightly off, or occasionally slightly ahead of Kane during the World Cup, but it doesn't bring the best out of him. No, that's absolutely right. You touched upon something, and it's something that I get asked so many times by football fans in America, and that is about mentality. And you get this asked all over the place, I'm sure you have as well. Is how come you guys haven't won anything from '66? And I often say, Henry Winter has a very good book about that. But, there was that famous book, I think it's called Why England Fail, written by, I forget it was an American author, but as I said, I think
you are one of the best qualified people to sort of delve into this area. It is an enormous conversation.
I still didn't come up with a
You
conclusion.
haven't come up with a conclusion, I know. It's like quantum physics. You can't
Yeah.
quite identify where a particle is.
I think we are obsessed with so many sports in this country
Yeah.
that the sort of, you know, the talent pool is spread around. Rugby is spread around cricket. Okay, maybe in cricket.
And the only country
different
that's
time
won
of
the
years.
World Cup in all three of, you could say, the world's
Yeah.
major team sports.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Although, you know, America is probably the greatest sporting country in the world, and they, you know, you haven't won a cricket. You know, come on, get your act together.
Well, they're very angry there about their own football team. They get
Yeah.
it how with their money and their facilities.
Yeah.
There's pretty furious fans about why haven't they at least got to a World Cup semi-final, you know. So
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I take
But just a sort of broader point on America. I mean, I've been going to that great country for years and watching soccer develop. I mean, I can remember I covered '94. I was in Chicago, Detroit, and Washington to cover games there when I was at the Independent. And you would talk to people, and you go on to radio shows, and I'll never forget going on a phone in Chicago. And so, you know, they introduced me and said, "There's Henry Winter from London, England. He's over here covering this sort of soccer ball competition. And will you just sort of tell us about, you know, I think Switzerland were playing." And so I sort of talked about it and said, well, you know, why it's a beautiful game and all that. And they said, well, that's really interesting. Now stay on because we're going to open the phone lines. And this is a radio station in downtown Chicago. And I'll never forget the first call. There was a pause. And it was all, what's your question on the big burning subject, you know, with all these soccer fans in town. And there was a pause, and it was John, whoever from downtown Chicago, went, getting back to OJ. Because it was when the OJ chase and all that was sort of going on, and that was. But I think now, if I go and watch an MLS game, if I talk to, you know, it is big.
Yeah, it's massive.
Absolutely big, and the national team, the women's team, is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got some amazing players, role models, obviously deserved winners of the World Cup. Gave everyone else a bit of a lesson out there. And the men's team, I'm sure the men's team will come through. It's because, you know, Americans don't fail.
Absolutely. I mean, the problem I think is that it's the most widely played sport at high school.
Sure.
But there is a disconnect with college soccer because everybody then kind of splits into baseball, basketball.
Sure, but maybe increasingly people see they can make a living with the MLS and more franchises coming in. Obviously, David Beckham's really interesting. Maybe people will realise them more. Maybe also if you have, you know, there's certain communities where clubs are sort of cropping up, and maybe they're more traditional soccer, inverted commas, communities, then it will grow. But Americans don't fail for long.
No, that's the thing. They just seem to get it right, and which makes this, you know, our impasse just so much more infuriating.
Yeah.
But you know, and it makes me want to ask this question. I ask it, I always, I mean, do you think we will win a tournament in I don't want to say our lifetimes.
England.
Yes, England. I'm not an American yet.
Yeah, no, I think there was a good chance because of the youth, because Southgate's got this fearlessness, because there's a depth of quality. I think there still is an issue with mindset, the belief. I think England have overcome the penalty curse. It's quite interesting just listening to sort of journalists how they refer to England, because it would always be England or them until about sort of 2 years ago, almost like there was a distance because you know, they were slightly naughty, unsuccessful younger brother you didn't really want to be associated with at school, and now they are, you know, they're popular, fashionable. Okay, they've had the, you know, little blip, but I think if they can find, I mean, the irony, of course, is that, you know, we're talking about sort of, you know, under Sven, Scholes, Carrick, Lampard, and Gerrard. Any of those four would walk into England's central midfield mode. England are crying out for sort of a Carrick, just to calm things down, have that crazy. I'm slightly biased because I wrote a book with him and spent a lot of time analysing why his game was good and why England sort of needs someone like him, just to sort of marshal it around a little bit more, to take the ball. I mean, if Carrick was playing now, with the way teams are playing out from the back, and he could take the ball on the half turn and just sort of take the ball under pressure as he used to do, and play 1-2s with Scholes and build up the pitch.
Nicky Butt was such a stand-up player in 2002, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I mean, everyone saw him as a defensive midfielder, but, you know, when he was coming through at Manchester United, certainly the academy teams, you know, he was always getting on to, you know, getting into the box and scoring. He was a terrific player. But yeah, I mean, England do need, individuals in that area. But then maybe Phil Foden obviously plays slightly further forward when he plays for Manchester City. He will, he can bring that little bit of composure. I mean, if you look at the attacking options, midfield and attacking options in the under-21s, it is pretty exciting. It
is. Foden is another one. I mean, briefly, what should he do? I mean, if he's not getting into that team, shouldn't he think about a loan move abroad?
It's really difficult because instinctively I agree with you in terms of it's vital they go out and get minutes. I mean, I think of the 23 players who went to the World Cup. They played for 90 clubs. So a lot of them had been out on loan. Obviously, we know Harry Kane, Millwall, Leicester, teams like that, which really developed them. Nick Pope seemed to have gone through sort of half the clubs in Cambridgeshire, just sort of playing for them, and Suffolk, developing, getting minutes. Absolutely, Jordan Henderson went to Coventry City and learned kind of how to be a man as well as a footballer, because the under-23 league doesn't work. So they need to be loaned out and put into sort of tough, competitive atmosphere, just to make them appreciate. First, this is real football, this is men's football, but also they're playing against and with people whose livelihoods depend on it. So they're in this academy bubble. It takes them out of that and makes them realise you've got to give absolutely everything. But I think with Foden is having such exceptional coaching at the moment. Pep Guardiola.
That's the thing.
I mean, it's brilliant the coaching he's getting. He's learning from watching David Silva as a professional, as a person, how he deals with fame, how he is off the pitch. So I think that is quite an education to suddenly take him out and put him somewhere else. I mean, I think there's not an agreement, but there's an understanding there that when David Silva steps down at the end of this season, Foden will step up.
Is that a definite he will step down?
Well, that's the understanding. But
he's not getting any worse, is he?
He's not getting any worse. You see, that's the issue. He could easily sort of train on, and sort of not train on, but he could easily continue. And then of course you've got Bernardo Silva, who can play central as well as coming in from the right side. You've got Mahrez, who's now playing well on the right. You've got Sterling on the left. There's still the issue of when Sane comes back. So yeah, I mean, I can see the case either way. I just think it's when you've got such a teacher.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, but my concern is that not that there's a kind of deception. That's way too strong a word. But Guardiola obviously wants him there, but Guardiola's got a bit of a balancing act as well. I mean, at some point he's going to have to sort of think, this kid, I'm making him wait and wait and wait.
We are at the stage of the season where games come thick and fast.
Yes.
And he will have to play. So he'll play in the League Cup, he'll play in the FA Cup, probably maybe one or two sort of end of game appearances in the Champions League. But interesting now, because in a way Guardiola can't afford any slip-ups.
No.
Because Liverpool are almost disappearing over the horizon. Yeah. So he's going to have to play, put all his big hitters in.
Yeah. Can Foden get into the squad next summer? Is there time?
Well, with England, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Southgate does say, they've got to play regularly. But Gomez hasn't been playing so regularly for Liverpool, and he's in the squad. I think that, I think Foden can get in there, because England will be crying out for someone with a bit of X factor to play in there. The interesting debate at the moment, of course, is James Maddison's not here.
Yes,
he was ill,
shame.
Then he went home, then he was pictured in a casino while England were playing, which was, he can do what he likes with with his money and his free time, but it was the timing of it to do it. He should have been at home watching England play, almost sending tacit support with tweets or texts or whatever, rather than sort of playing poker or whatever he was playing. So I did, but there's a certain confidence and a certain swagger to Maddison that we've seen with Leicester City. We saw it with the under-21s, even in a disappointing under-21 tournament last summer. So I think Maddison will also be pushing Foden to play that position. Yeah,
the maverick perhaps.
The
Gazza type.
Which England need.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, the fulcrum of England is still Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane, though there are questions, not strong questions, but there are, sort of questions going around that. Sterling probably the most important. I mean, on and off the pitch as well. Sterling is a remarkable young man. I know you've had a very special day with Raheem Sterling where you were able to visit him.
Well, it was an hour. So
that's a lot. That's more an hour than I.
It might be 50 minutes as well.
Well, I was just.
It's good. But he is a very impressive individual. I mean, his Instagram post the morning after the Chelsea game when he basically called out the media and he said, listen, the abuse that players can get is often linked in. You can trace it back to some of the sort of the abuse or the depiction, particularly of black players in the media. And he called us out on it, and I ran out the office and I said, this is one of the most important moments of the season, this Instagram post. We've got to react to it as an organisation. I mean, we're actually, the Times is pretty diverse on the sports desk, but I imagine that Raheem Sterling was going into press conferences and looking around and thinking, it's pretty much an all-white audience. How can they have empathy or an understanding of what I go through? So I think that's, as you say, off the pitch, incredibly important. But what I like, even though he's been under this fierce spotlight, first initially critical and now adulatory in terms of English football, is very proud. It's got this person who goes out and speaks and makes a difference, huge role model. That his football hasn't been affected in any way. No. I mean, he's been playing fantastically well for club and country, goals, assists. Again, coming back to the Foden point, you see how someone develops under Guardiola and Mikel Arteta as well. You've got to credit him as well at City. So yeah, he's a remarkable individual.
You talk about journalism. I want to switch up a tiny bit here. A couple of things. I had a friend of mine over from the States who you met, and one of the things that we came into the press room and he sort of looked around. Of course, there's a fresh face looking at it, and he just said, "No women, no, and very few people of colour." What is the future? Is it?
I think it is changing. I think it's definitely changing. There's some fantastic female writers.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some fantastic female writers when I was growing up. People like Julie Welsh. There are some. I mean, to an extent, the industry has contracted in terms of opportunity. But if I go into a journalism school now, I will say it's probably about a quarter women, and this is on football journalism courses, sports journalism courses, and it is far more diverse. But yeah, I mean, if you look at on the field, a team can often be, incredibly diverse. You saw it with England in the World Cup last summer, and that was a celebration of the sort of the diversity in the country. But yeah, absolutely, we've got to do more in the media. I mean, what do you do individually? You can write columns, and all I do individually is just, if you get messages on Twitter, or you bump into people outside grounds or whatever, or you see somebody saying, well, wow, I've read his blog, that's really good. I just get them to come into the Times. Just show them journalism is a meritocracy, as it should be. You're only as good as your last blog, your last report, whatever. But then what I do go is I sit them down over coffee and I go through their blogs. And I say, look, that is absolutely brilliant. Move that around there. Don't like statistics so high up unless they're absolute gold dust. And actually spend sort of half an hour going through. So absolutely more responsibility on me and my profession to open up more, because the talent is there.
Certainly is. In fact, I'm going to bother you with one of my new guy, young kid, Adam. I'll have to send you one of his blogs.
Yeah, do.
Don't put this top of the line or anything, but he's. I think he's got exceptional potential.
What is very fortunate for this generation, and without sounding like sort of Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets, a real oldie, is that technology is brilliant. Like when I was starting out, I had to go and physically knock on doors on Fleet Street where all the newspapers were and ask for someone if they would see me and give me some advice and then maybe take me on. Whereas now, with social media, with blogging, with pods, with the technology, everyone now has a platform. And so I can tell within 5 minutes of someone posting something, I go, well, that's really good.
If they've got it.
If absolutely they've got it. And when I get CVs sent to me, so I really don't want to know how many, what grades you are, violin or Latin or whatever. Just send me a link to your blogs.
Yeah, that's great, and it is just the access now that you get. How did you? What? So the Independent was first. How did you end up sort of getting in your first break? And there's a lot of people who want to know this, but.
Do you know, I talk to a lot of students about it now, and actually I think, well, first because when I was doing it so long ago, their parents weren't even born. But it's a completely different landscape. Yeah. It's a different country in terms of just the access. It was more difficult to break into then than it is now. because of technology. So how did I do it? Well, I've got the job I've wanted since I was like sort of 14, 15. So university was all about working on the student newspaper, playing for the university team, getting a degree. Amazingly, I managed to scrape a degree. although my finals were on Jesse Owens and the 36 Olympics, so it was, it wasn't exactly hard work. And then just going down to London and banging on doors, and eventually an agency, a sports news agency, took me on, got me sort of ringing up people for sort of programmes. And I remember ringing up John Hollins, who was a great Arsenal and Chelsea player of the past, who was then managing Chelsea, and I got talking to him because I had to do his programme notes. And he's the nicest person in the world, and he said to me, why don't you ring me back in a couple of hours when you've done a little bit of research and you've got your questions sorted out? And it was a lesson, absolutely. I had to learn to do research properly. But also he said it in such a charming way. And then they sent me out to cover some matches, and I was useless at that, so they just had me for a month sticking in phones for people for when they were covering matches. Okay. So I was down on my feet in the sort of in the cigarettes and dust at Vicarage Road, at Watford, and at Luton, Kenilworth Road, just sort of plugging phones in so the proper reporters could dial in their copy. So did that, and then just kind of worked my way up very slowly.
And then England beckoned.
Yeah, well, England was always, to write about England, having sort of followed England as a fan, to write about England is brilliant. I mean, I'm a bit of I love travelling. And the opportunity to go and cover England. I know, exactly. It's glorious. I've just been for a run here, and I mean, it's just to explore.
And we'd never get to see a lot of these places, would we? That's the Kosovo next month.
You don't. Fantastic. I can remember mentioned Southgate. I can remember having a chat with him in Rome when England landed, because we used to fly with the team then in '97 when they had they needed a point in the Italians' backyard to qualify for France '98. I remember talking to him at Rome Airport. So, he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'll probably have a little look around the Vatican, and then I'll go for a run along the river. Then I'll probably have lunch with some friends. Then we've got a press match against the Italians in the afternoon, and there's a do at the embassy, which the press have got to go to. And then I'll probably file some work, then I'll go out in the evening, and there's a great restaurant in town where the chef just sings all these amazing Italian arias, and then I'll probably sort of go for a sort of drink with friends near the Trevi Fountain, and then get up in the morning and probably go and watch training for 10 minutes, and then do the same thing again. And he was sort of, shaking his head, going out. So what are you going to do? He said, well, I'll probably see the inside of a hotel room, then I'll see the outside of a training ground, then I'll see the inside of a hotel room, and then I'll see the inside of a dressing room, and then the outside of a football pitch, and I'll go on the field at the Stadio Olimpico. And look, he wasn't feeling sorry for himself, but what he did say was quite interesting. He said, when I've retired, I want to go and explore all these places I've only seen through a window. Yeah,
that's a great point. Well, you do make good use of your time. I feel quite shrinking in comparison.
Yeah, that was that Rome trip.
I suppose Rome you've got to, haven't you? Yeah,
Rome was fantastic. But you have to. And I get up. I'm not a big sleeper, so I get up early and go for a run. There's nothing better than seeing a city wake up in the morning, and you get a sort of insight into what makes it tick. Just going and sitting in sort of coffee shops and just watching the world go by, trying to pick up a few words of the language and just explore. I mean, you think of the World Cups that we've been fortunate to go to. Japan in 2002, to explore Japan. I mean, I'd be getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, get the bullet train from Kobe, where England were based, to Kyoto, and go and see many of the sort of temples and shrines, and about 2,000-3,000 of them there. Have a quick snack of tofu, and then head back for England press conferences at lunchtime. Just to see, I mean, we are incredibly fortunate, this opportunity to see the world and to write about something that we're pretty crazy about, but we're never good enough to play.
Japan is the one that I think across the board, I hear both fans and media just say it was just an incredible experience.
It was brilliant. I mean, I was in Japan rather than Korea, and the journalists who were in Korea, they were just, the Weeby Red, the whole sort of South Korean national team, they run to the semi-final. The whole country went. I mean, I remember I went over and actually did their semi-final. I remember that night there, I was going, oh God, this is unbelievable. Just how engaged they were with the team and the tournament. It
was a wonderful time. I'm going to keep you for just a couple more things. Sure. One's a bit topical, and it's something that I only thought to ask you because of a couple of things that I saw this week. it's that horrible subject, which is the hooliganism problem, and I've had a number of fans come up to me, and I probably sit around with fans maybe a little bit more than media does, because I mean I base the show, I try to as much as I can on fan experiences, and I've had a pretty sort of consistent unpleasant, not in any way aggressive, physically aggressive, but confrontational when I say that, you know, I work in part of the media. And many fans are, you know, they are out of line and they do it. But I have had some quite, well said, articulate complaints saying that they are so sick and tired of the media, and it's mainly a certain aspect of the media. We know that there are certain writers that do it, that they are completely portrayed as, I mean, what they say is that they do instigate it. I'm not saying that in some cases they don't, but they feel like they get tarred so much with the same brush, and they do claim, and I can't say I have first-hand knowledge of this, that when they're boisterous, when they are perhaps, you know, I won't call it confrontational, but loud and boisterous, they do claim that they have had riot police, one itchy riot police member come in and just flick it off, and of course then they're going to retaliate. But the level of it right now, I think, is really a level that I haven't recalled, where they are so almost exasperated by it. And I wonder if you felt that, or because you're another one who actually you do mingle a bit with the fans. You know a few of the fans. I've seen that.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, do you hear that? And what can be done about it?
I mean, we have talked to them about it, and I said, well, let's sort of rewind it. I mean, England have got this reputation because of the behaviour of fans in the past. The majority of England fans now, particularly with the the members of the club, the FA club, they're great. They're just sort of, you know, you see middle-aged couples wandering around with a sort of guidebook in one hand, and you know, where we're going to go and have a sort of a good drink at lunchtime, and then they. You know, the majority are fantastic, and their support is brilliant. Unfortunately, there are, and you know, you talk to the fans about it. You know, the good fans, and they will say, you know, they are working hard, almost a little bit of self-policing, and the Football Association have done their part as well, just to sort of deal with this sort of minority. It partly depends game to game on where it is. So if it's a location like Amsterdam, you know, on a Friday night, you are going to get a lot of people who want to go to England away, as they call it, because it looks a great trip in a great place like that, bit of a buzz, and some drink too much and get carried away.
But they don't smoke more weed there.
Yeah, and there's an issue there. I mean, they've got a bad reputation, so the Twitch. I mean, it depends. I mean, Germany have got fantastic. They've got very good police in terms of sort of dealing with fans. So again, it depends slightly country to country. The Spanish are a bit sort of itchy. They was always on edge when English fans are around. But I mean, they describe. I've had this debate with them. Describe, one person's boisterous is another person's offensive.
That is the issue.
If you're a shop owner and you're someone walking back to your house and you've got 50 fans chanting whatever, then it's not nice. I just think there should be a balance in some of the reporting to say the majority of them are absolutely fine, and also when a trip does go off, fine. Actually, to say, well, fair play.
Give them credit.
Give them credit to the fans. I mean, they were good out in Russia. Some of the chants, you just think, come on, move on.
That I completely agree with. I mean, I think what the issue was is that how do they know what happened if they're writing sort of, it's like ivory tower sort of type viewpoint they have. That seemed to be it was sort of kind of a, if you like, fake news aspect about it. So how do you know? Were they standing there and saw this? But I think you've nailed it. I mean, it's unfortunately something that is there because of the reputation they've had, 80s, 90s, so on. But it was just something I'd put out there to try and say, look, there are journalists who do try to listen and do that.
Yeah.
All right, quick fires now.
Go on.
I have to go to my computer for a few of these. You don't have to quick fire answer, but
come on.
So, favourite England player?
Of all time?
Well, yes. I guess I could do one. One that you've seen if it's different to one that
I love watching Scholes.
Really?
Yeah, I just thought Scholes.
Of all the years, you think?
I mean, it's hard to sort of. I mean, Gazza at his best was fantastic. Gerrard, Lampard, Shearer. I mean, I would say the best I have seen in
Playing
terms of
for
pure
England.
consistency.
Yes.
In terms of for England, I'd say Ashley Cole.
That's a great answer because he was somebody who was flawless in a way.
Yeah,
for England, wasn't he?
I've never seen anyone play Ronaldo better.
And maybe before your era, who you've seen?
Well, I think the greatest sportsman that England has ever produced, Sir Bobby Charlton.
Charlton. I was wondering if it was going to be Moore or Charlton. My favourite is Moore.
Yeah, no, I understand the Moore because I saw the icon. I mean, I was privileged to have met him on a couple of occasions, and just class, dignity, style, glamour, everything about Bobby. Ridiculous he wasn't knighted. But yeah, with Sir Bobby Charlton, I just think with the European Cup as well as the World Cup, Ballon d'Or, you know, and it just a joy to watch.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
he was great. Favourite England match, either that you've covered or just in general, or watched them?
I mean, I enjoyed the matches at the World Cup because England were doing well, and winning penalty shootouts was something that my computer was not primed to allow those words to appear on the stage without steam coming out. Munich was pretty special, 5-1. I'll probably go back to France '98. I just thought some of England's performances there. I thought the Saint Etienne performance, that game just had everything. It had the red card, it had the goals, it had Michael Owen exploding onto the world scene. It had brilliant tactical reaction from Hoddle in terms of getting Michael Owen and then Alan Shearer shuttling up and down the right after Beckham got sent off. It had the sort of drama of the shootout. It kicked off in the car park afterwards when some of the Argentinian players weren't particularly respectful to the English. So in terms of a sort of dramatic, probably that one.
That was probably the most dramatic game I've ever seen. I have a weird one. I know this is about you, but I wonder what your thoughts are about this game. I wasn't even born, but it's the England-Brazil 1970 match, which I think was... I watched it from beginning to end, and the standard of football. I mean, you had maybe the greatest ever international side against the current world champions, who many people said then were better than they were in '66. The quality of that match was just phenomenal.
One save.
One save.
Best from Pele. I mean,
and one tackle.
And one tackle. Yeah, I mean, as you say, it was probably the best team the world's ever seen in terms of Brazil, certainly internationally. So, absolutely.
And I think Pele said it was one of the hardest games that they
really
won, but just stand about it, just the game that should be studied. All right, I'm going to let you off in 1 minute. This is a kind of tricky one, but maybe you've answered it. Is there a moment with England? And again, you could stretch this out to off the pitch. Is there something that sort of a burst of joy that gave your favourite England
2002,
moment?
England against Brazil, ludicrously hot weather. Michael Owen nicks the ball off Lucio, who's a fantastic centre-half, but just got done by Michael's anticipation. Owen at the time had a hamstring problem. I mean, before the match, he'd been on a local golf course next to the England team hotel with a physiotherapist giving really deep massage just to try and loosen him up. Michael knew that he didn't have many sprints in him. He'd injured himself against Denmark in the previous round. But he just knew that when it came, he was just so ruthless with England. The first, he had the sort of mental strength to sort of, in a way, compartmentalise the fact that he had his hamstring, an issue with his hamstring, and he just had that burst away from Lucio and scored. And I looked around the press box and I thought, wow, this is opening up for England.
Could this happen?
Could this really happen? It was a sort of sliding doors moment, and then obviously Ronaldinho's goal, Beckham jumping out of a tackle, England sort of melted. But I think that moment I thought, wow, this is a tournament where England, against Brazil, is such a good team. If England could win that, the road to Yokohama really does.
Well, I think we would have won it probably. But it was. It's funny because I remember that thing, Shizuoka, of course, and being the stand that I was on my own. I did think, my goodness, we are 1-0 up against Brazil. 44 minutes were like, but you can see that just that moment to concede.
If England had held on and England had won the World Cup, I wouldn't have come back from Tokyo for a long time. About 2 or 3 nightclubs that I would have just taken up residence I'd have been like Norm from Cheers, just sort of sitting there with my drink, sort of, absolute permanent residency. Just.
I get it.
Yeah.
Japan has got it's got that grip on you, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has, yeah.
All right, Henry. I think I shall subject you to know more.
Okay.
I could go on with you. We could talk for so long, but I can't thank you enough for this.
Enjoyed it. Good question.
Checks in the mail. It won't ever. It'll be blank, but
yeah, it'll bounce. Yeah.
But Henry Winter, thank you so much, and let's see what the future brings.
My pleasure.